want to say, first of all, thank you, Elizabeth and Deanna, for trusting me with this community, and to each of you for making time to be here today. As Deanna said, this is a, shall we say, curious time to be a business owner, and the slide should come up here in a minute. In a minute, and there we go. Okay. So everyone can see that. Elizabeth, can you let me know that you can see that okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
cool, excellent, because now I've lost everyone's face. So I'm going to be just working at this based upon what I have here in front of me. And so I will just pause from time to time to ask if there are any questions, and I may stop share so I can see your faces again. My intention today, everyone, is to leave you feeling hopeful, slightly less overwhelmed, and with at least one specific action that you can take. I think that this all has been happening long enough that the sort of the cyclone, as I see it, that we've been in is starting to settle down, and people are getting their touchstones and kind of finding their way through. So I want to acknowledge that for all of you. And I do want to say that I am a realist and an optimist and a pragmatist all rolled into one. And you're going to hear a little bit of that today. Some of you are going to be hearing things that you've heard before. And I'm going to invite you just to pause for a second and get curious about how what I'm saying you might approach now. What about now is different than some other time when you've looked at it? Or who else might you talk to about this idea and maybe gain a different perspective on? I believe very much that we're all here right now for a reason. And I say this, jokingly to clients all the time. The good news or the bad news, depending on which way you look at it, is there's likely nothing that I'm about to tell you that you have not heard. I just want to help package this up and present it because there has never been another time in the history of small business that we are facing what we're facing now. And I recognize that in each of you. And I want you to understand too, that it's hard, and I get it. And I'm not sitting here in some insulated bubble. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my background so you can understand, first of all, where my passion and enthusiasm for small business comes from, and why I care so much about the success of small business and what we can do about it. Every single second right now, things are changing, and I see decision fatigue everywhere with all small business owners. It's a real thing, and there's so much that we're trying to decide, and every decision that you are making impacts somebody else, and you're trying your best to take your next best business step. My background, I started what I call my entrepreneurial odyssey in 1996. So I've been doing this for a day or two, and had a chance to buy my first business in 2002. I was the ripe old age of 32 years old, and I had no idea what I was doing running a business. I was a really good practitioner. I was in financial services. I was a great broker. I was a great investment advisor. I could lead a tiny team, but I didn't have the skill set to be a CEO and a CFO. And that's when I hired my first business coach, because I knew in order to get where I needed to go, I needed to have somebody who'd walk that path with me and help me understand what my next best steps were going to be. Within a year of opening that office, I had my coach. I was growing my team. We crossed multiple six figures. That following year, we got into our first 7 figures. And then the next year, we were into our second 7 figures. I had 18 people working for me. And I felt personally responsible for everyone who walked through my office and the financial obligations that they had for themselves. I felt responsible for. So I get it. I feel your heart, each of you making these kinds of decisions. By 2007, 5 years into opening the doors, I knew, and it wasn't just like I woke up in 2007 and went, oh God, it had been coming at me for a while, but I knew that I was in danger. My business was at risk because of the way we had built it. We were a lead-based direct mail marketing was our lead system. Think about it. As I saw everyone's faces on here, you can recall back to 2007. The internet was a itty bitty baby idea. Internet marketing wasn't really a thing yet. And so we were very old school in how we did our direct mail marketing. We had a high response rate. We had great name recognition, and things were cooking along. But unfortunately, I had never been able to unlock the secret to creating another way of serving businesses. So we were bringing in about 80% of our revenue through one channel, which we know puts the business at risk. And in working with my business coach, that had been an ongoing conversation, but could never unlock the secret to getting that other avenue going. And so by 2007, I knew that things were in danger. That 80% of our multiple seven-figure revenue was coming in out of the housing market. So we did lead-based life insurance sales to start through the housing market. So you buy your home, you refinance. It's a time to look at your finances. By the end of 2007, I knew I needed to sell that business. I wasn't going to be able to ride what was coming, I believed. Though the crystal ball was broken, I decided that I needed to sell. So I went shopping for an organization, found a company in California, sold that in the spring of 2008, moved a 1,600 square feet office into my home, daylight basement and worldwide headquarters. And that was a big moment for me. And so it was hard, and I understand. And I'm going to tell you to hang in there, because things will change and things will improve. Now, in the moment that I did that in the spring of 2008, I felt horrible. I felt like a failure. I knew that the math of it wasn't going to work if the economy took a turn. I knew all that, but there was the emotion of it that I had to wrestle with. And then in the fall, the economy did definitely crash. So in that moment, I was relieved. I was relieved that I had taken those steps. And so as hard as some of the things are that you're making decisions about today, there will be relief, because it's only in when we get distance, when we get further down the road, that you're going to be able to see, like, I'm so glad I made these really hard decisions. The other thing I'm going to say is that, we're all in this together. You have an amazing community there at the chamber, and these are people who are a brain trust for you, and leaning into them right now, sharing ideas and best practices, resources, information, ideas, and sometimes either a kick in the pants or a virtual hug, like whatever it is that you're going to need to do. During that time for me, I talked a lot with other business owners and began to understand how they were shifting their business models, and recognizing that for me, I had a skill set in looking at business, and that shifted what I wanted to be when I grew up. So in 2011, I sold the last piece of my financial services company. I'd only worked with women during that time, and began coaching women business owners for the last 9 years. And so my clients are everything, just so we have context here. And then we're going to jump into the meat of this. They're everything from beekeepers to bookkeepers, then anything in between. What I know to be true is that the process of running a business is essentially the same, whether it is my cannabis retailer in Redmond, Washington, my commercial beekeeper in Lindsay, California, or my consultancy in Heidelberg, Germany. I have yet to meet, though, a business owner who started their company because they knew how to run that business. They started it because they have a passion, probably like you, and they had a purpose, and they found a way to solve a really unique problem that their skill set allowed them to do. And becoming a CEO and CFO of your small business takes time, effort, and training. And yes, while some, if not all of you, have people who do your marketing or your finances, there are so many things that you as a business owner also need to understand. So let's jump into this now. I gave you all that context so that you understand that this isn't just, a talking head sitting here in front of you, but this is somebody who's been on this path for a while and has been through an experience where the economy was spiraling out of control. And I felt that there was nothing I could do to change things. And yet in hindsight, I know there were things that I did that changed the trajectory and ultimately the outcomes that became positive, and the same can happen for you. So here's the first thing. This is where we're going to start. Don't panic. I need everyone just to take a big old deep breath right now. And as I said at the beginning, decision fatigue is a real thing. And making rash decisions is not going to sustain you for the long term. So now that enough time has passed and we're all starting to get some perspective and we're getting a sense of what our realities look like in our respective states, you guys in the state of Oregon, me up here in the state of Washington, starting to plan out and really look at what the long term is. And I know some of you have already made some really hard decisions. You made it before your governor said only essential businesses could be open. You made the decision that you needed to close your physical storefront. And likely, some of you now have shifted or pivoted, as the cool kids would say, and you're finding ways to bring in some revenue at this time. The big thing, though, is don't panic. There are resources, as you know, and we're going to talk about that are available to you, and there are things that you can do. And I believe very much that through this, some of the greatest innovation and opportunities will happen for small business, because there are problems and circumstances that didn't exist until a month ago. And we as entrepreneurs, intrepid souls that we are the kind of folks who figure things out. And that's what's going to happen for each of you. So first thing, don't panic. Second thing, we need to take a look at your cash reserves. Now, I want some context here for everyone. Some of you are already well down this path and you've done it. Fantastic. I'm going to give you a virtual high five and I want you to take a look at it one more time. Some of you are just starting into this process. Good. Go through this step by step and you'll be glad you did. I've been having this conversation, this presentation with different organizations across the country. And so depending on where they were, some were able to take more forward action as opposed to rearview mirror reflective action. An organization I just talked to a few weeks ago back in North Carolina, they weren't under a, mandated only essential businesses are open. So they had a little time. I think by the time I did that conversation, they had about 10 days before that order came down for them. So there were some things that they could do proactively and preemptively. For you here in the state of Oregon, you are already under the mandated closure, except for essential services. So, but I want you to take a look at your cash reserves. And I want you to do this a couple of different ways. So the first way is, how long can the business survive if all the revenue stopped immediately? And, the answer to that will depend on how you have been able to steward money into different accounts for the longevity of the business. Similar to you as the individual household, 3 months, 6 months of operating expenses set aside, or less than that. And so I know many small business owners are very lean, but taking a look at, okay, business is done today. What do I have in the bank? What do I have accessible by credit if we need to go there to keep things afloat for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months? What are my options? Now, I'm going to have you do that before I'm going to go to the next one, which is about expenses. So I think we need to know what the run rate is, what your actual burn rate is, as if nothing had changed, even though everything has. So what are the cash reserves? How long can the business survive if all the revenue stopped today, which for many of you it has. Now, the next thing that I want you to do is, with the cash reserves you have, run some projections about the health of the business, how long you could sustain at current expenses if the business lost 25% of its revenue, or 50% of its revenue, or 75% of its revenue. So running those different models, and what I see with my clients is we kind of do it almost like a timeline, so if we have 100% of our income and expenses, it takes us obviously into infinity and beyond. If we have 100% of our expenses, but 75% of our income, that takes us, less and less and less, all the way down to zero. And by doing that, it starts to give you clues about the next phase, which is, what do we need to do to reduce the expenses? And what I will share with each of you right now is you got to get that pencil really sharp, and it's going to be hard. It's going to involve, as you already know, furloughing staff, laying them off, cutting out things that you like in your business but are not necessary. And what I am asking my clients to do is to look at all costs and keep only the things that are operational or generate revenue. Everything else needs to find a way to go. And we're going to talk a little bit about negotiating some of your payables here in a minute too. So really getting clear on reducing those expenses and only keeping what is operational and can generate you revenue right now. This is the time to be super aggressive. One of my clients, when we got the only essential business order from our governor here in the state of Washington, we had a meeting that day. And she was obviously overwhelmed. She's a naturopathic doctor, and she was, just paralyzed like many people. And she said to me, what I think I want to do, Debbie, is I'm going to take the next couple weeks and I'm going to see how this goes. And with a lot of love and great direct communication skills, I said, you won't and you can't. And if you do, you won't be in business. So instead, I'm going to give you 24 hours to be, and then we're going to kick into gear and we're going to figure this out. And we need to look at how long can you survive as you are, and how long will you, just what I'm asking you to do, what does it look like if we drop your revenue 75%, 50%, 25%? And what expenses can we eliminate immediately? The good news is, and you're going to hear me say this throughout, the good news is that those first 2 weeks were terrifying for her. The plans and objectives that she had set up for herself were going to have to dramatically shift. Now, at this point, I just talked to her. We had a session this week, and her clients who had completely retracted and canceled everything, she can do telemedicine, have now started to reschedule their appointments, right? So they're getting into the rhythm. They're understanding this online world that she lives in. So there is good news out there, and things are shifting. So look at reducing your expenses and get really clear. And for some clients, it's even been a decision to not take a salary themselves for a month or two. That can be something that you can consider during this process as well. In terms of the expenses, it might mean that you reduce or cut your salary for a period of time as well, in order for the business to be able to survive. It was days before the governor's order of only essential businesses that one of our top restaurants here, one of our top restaurant owners, made the decision to close 12 of its 13 locations. And it was a real shock to the community. And, he said, and I so appreciated this, that I ran the numbers every way I possibly could. And mathematically, it doesn't work. And the only way I have a chance to be here when this is done is to take this very decisive action today. And that was not easy for him, because that impacted hundreds of employees. And you're all making those same kinds of decisions too. And again, like I said in the beginning, we're all in this together. So just know that as you're trying to look at things, don't be afraid to call in the counsel and support of your friends here at the chamber, or some of your mastermind or accountability partners who you have in business, and say, am I missing something here? What is it that I can look at that I'm not seeing because I'm too close to it in my business? Those are things that you can rely on one another for, and you'll be glad that you did. The other thing that you need to consider doing right now is adjusting your business plan. And this is where the pencil starts to get really sharp. And for those of you, there's a concept that I'll take a client through using job costing and looking at the profit and loss statement and profit margins by category within a business. And we get down to what is the most and least profitable product, offering, or even client that they have, and begin making decisions to eliminate the low profit ones for the moment. It may be that a low profit offering was a great lead generator. It was a great way to bring people through the door. But now that doesn't make sense. And so it really is about getting to the essential service or product that you can provide and stay on one track at this moment. So taking a look and really getting clear on what's the most profitable and least profitable, and eliminating anything that doesn't bring in a good margin for you during this time, because the expense on the other side isn't going to be worth it. Now, from a cash flow perspective, the other thing you can do is look at ways to accelerate your receivables, get really creative with getting money flowing into your business. You could use, for service-based businesses, look at how you could steal something out of the Tesla playbook. They require a healthy deposit to begin production of your, air quotes around that, car. And they use your money, not theirs, to build that vehicle. So how could you do that as a service or even product-based business? Could you offer incentives for payment in full, 1%, 2%, whatever makes sense, depending on your margin and your markup? Could you use milestones if you're a project-based business for work that are time-based rather than deadline-based? So perhaps if you're, as an example, a web designer, graphic designer, you might have a 25% down to start and 25% at this deliverable milestone, and then the balance when the project is done. You might look at flipping that model around and saying, how about, what if you did 50% down up front? That gives you a bigger influx of cash right away. And then 25% in 30 days, and then the remaining 25% in 30 days. You're able to do a better job of planning from a cash flow perspective, as opposed to a deadline perspective. And having clients who are in web and graphics work, it can be really challenging because your clients oftentimes get stuck on their side. So if the cash is predicated on getting to a certain point in the project, but the client is stuck for whatever reason, they're ghosting you, they're changing directions, chasing the squirrel, whatever it is, you now aren't stuck in terms of your cash flow with more money outstanding in receivables than you need to. So take a look at that. And it's, the beginning of the quarter. So it is a good time to change your processes as well, even with existing clients. And I don't think there is a single business owner out there who would not understand if you had a change in the terms and the way that you did business. I've seen it with client or with people who are vendors to me, because of the things that are changing right now economically. They're changing the ways that I pay, which is understandable, and I'm happy to accommodate that. So just be clear in your communication, but look at ways to accelerate the receivables, whether it's bigger deposits at the front. Can you offer incentives, again, payment in full, right? So getting bigger influxes of cash for you, or use milestones if you're a project-based business owner, but use time instead of where the project is in development. So that's on accelerating receivables. The next one is negotiate your payables. This is, goes back to cutting expenses that we had talked about a few slides ago. And you have the ability to negotiate. I say all the time that the answer is always no if we don't ask. For those of you who have rent, you have leases, you already likely have, and if you haven't, put this on your to-do list. Talk to your landlord. about what the options are to reduce or defer rent right now. Now, we all understand that that landlord is a small business owner as well. And they, as a landlord, have mortgage payments that they're beholden to. And so this can't go on forever. However, there are options. Depending on their circumstance, which you don't need to get into their business, and how they're cash flowing, they likely will have some flexibility for you. I've seen clients, one of my clients has an event space with an overhead, a rent payment that's about $10,000 a month. And her landlord came to her right as this mandated closure happened and said, don't worry about your rent for the next 2 months. I've got you. So that was such a gift for her, and to be able to know she's now got $20,000 to reallocate somewhere else in the budget, and that is going to significantly help her, and it is creating an even deeper sense of loyalty and commitment to that landlord and building that relationship. I've had other clients who on first pass have asked, and the landlord have said, nope, nothing I can do. And then as a few days have gone by, they have seen their invoices look differently. I have seen the landlords come back and say, let's do this. Pay what you can right now. We'll take this as, good faith. We know you're in business. Pay what you can this month and next month, and then let's talk about it. So our job, as small business people is to make sure that we're making the most strategic decisions and business decisions for ourselves with our cash and the cash flow. And having that conversation, with the landlord, being straight and upfront. Some of my clients, were not worried at all, but they wanted to know, like, if this goes on for 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, I want to talk with you, Mr. Landlord, to see what we might be able to do. I'm good right now. I'm good for the next month and the month after that. So don't worry about it. But if we go on longer, then what might we do? I've seen other landlords, people I know who are in commercial property, who have said to their tenants, don't worry about the next 2 months. We'll just put it at the end of your lease term, meaning they'll have a balloon payment essentially at the end of their lease, which again is a gift, right? For somebody to be able to take that off the overhead. But look at, in addition to rent, look at your utilities, look at what other bills that you have that you can delay or defer for now. The one thing I will say to you though is, even with the extension of the tax deadlines, do everything you can to stay current on those taxes. Those are going to not go away. And if you have that money now, allocate those resources, take care of those taxes, and continue on. Even if you're not going to file until later, making that tax payment now is still what I'm recommending to all of my clients. Check with your internet providers. I have seen internet service providers saying, don't worry about it. We will credit this month and next month's bill. Again, ask. The worst thing that's going to happen is you don't ask. The next best thing is you're going to ask and they'll say no. And then the ultimate best thing is they're going to say, sure, let's take a look and see what we can do here. But do negotiate your payables. Be honest with your vendors. For those of you who acquire products, they're small business owners too. I have seen businesses here in the area where I live have conversations with their vendors about, can we do any adjusting? Like, where are you? Usually I'm net 30. Can I go net 45 right now because things are slow, or I anticipate they're going to be slow? But look for ways that you can have those conversations, and do not be fearful about having money conversations right now. There is never going to be another time in history, I hope, there will never be another time in history where we will all have so much in common. Everyone is looking at their life and their business through a very critical lens. And I would be surprised if people didn't ask for things. I've had clients ask if they could change the scope of our relationship. They certainly are not wanting to, have me go away as a partner in their business, but can we change the scope of the project? Absolutely, we can. because I want to see them succeed. And I understand that as a small business, that's what we do. We ask these questions. So take a look again at what you can negotiate with your payables and buy yourself some time. Again, breathing room is going to be important for you because this is going to be going on for a while. And so if you can get yourself a little breathing room now until we can get into some of the opportunities for funding, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, you're going to be a lot better off as a business person. You're going to have a lot more confidence about the direction that you're heading. And that takes us to this topic, borrowing options. So I want to spend a little bit of time here, and I know there are likely many of you who will have questions on this. And so I want to talk about some of the federal programs that are out there. I know that for you all in the city of Hillsboro, there are funds that are being made available, have been made available. I'm going to encourage each of you to seriously sit down and consider what the best funding option, whether it's a loan or a grant, is for you and your business. But before you really start looking at that, you need to understand how much you're going to need, and then we can determine the best sources. And that's why back at the beginning of this conversation, I said, I really want you to get clear on, what is your burn rate currently? How long can the business survive at a 25% reduced revenue, a 50% reduced revenue, a 75% reduced revenue? Run those numbers. Because then when you're going into the application process and you're requesting funding, whether it's through a federal grant or loan, through your bank or through the SBA, or you're doing something through the city of Hillsboro, or you're doing something through the state of Oregon, you're going to be knowing what it is that you need in order to sustain the business as you have reduced it. Because again, this isn't business as usual money. And this is the thing that I have been cautioning people on for weeks now, is if businesses don't take those previous steps that I walked you through, getting really clear on that burn rate, understanding, what has been eliminated, what you can take off, of the books in terms of expenses, and you had a bit of a cash flow problem before, getting access to capital right now is only going to be the equivalent of kicking the can down the driveway even longer. It's not meant to fix what wasn't working before. It's meant to address, with dramatic shifts in your business model, how long can you continue to sustain with these additional funds, keep yourself moving forward. And that's why having you go through those previous steps is going to be so important. So let's talk about some of the programs. And I know you've probably all been doing your due diligence. I'm gonna do this for a second because I want to stop the share and I want to see some faces here for a minute. Okay, a lot of you have yourselves quiet, but I can see a few faces, so this is helpful. Hi, Henry, it's nice to see you. And Deanna, okay, good, and Elizabeth. So I want to talk about some of the programs that are out there. Obviously, I am not up to speed on what the city of Hillsboro is offering, and so the great community that you're in will be able to provide you information on the terms of application, how that money can be used and so on, but that is a resource that's available for you. And then, same thing with the state of Oregon. I know here in the state of Washington, our dedicated COVID information portal is, covid.wa.gov. And so I know the state of Oregon has something very similar. Be sure to check in with it. I know Deanna and her team and the other business owners in your city are staying up on what is coming available, and it literally is changing every day. It was just on Monday or Tuesday this week that the state of Washington opened up funds for small business as well, and those hadn't been available. And so now small business owners are able to access and apply for up to $10,000 here in the state of Washington as well. So just be aware of that. And also know that through your economic development councils and through other foundations and organizations, funds will continue to open up. So keep sharing what you hear, learning more about it as you can. And again, like I said at the very beginning, we're all in this together. So when you find something out, be sure to share it along with someone else or look for some support on that. So I think the one I want to start with is the one that so many people had, not excitement, but relief about, and now it's turned into great frustration. So we're going to talk about our friend, the PPP, which is the Payroll Protection Program. And so in light of that, I want to say a few things. So they open applications for certain sectors of business, not solopreneur, not gig economy people, but independent business people, small business owners last Friday. And unfortunately, most banks and institutions weren't even in a position to start taking applications until Monday if we were lucky. The SBA and the federal government didn't get the final information to these banks in many cases until Sunday. And so friends I know who were in banking were on conference calls all weekend trying to determine best practices and put things in place and whatnot. So if you know a banker, give them a virtual hug right now. They would really appreciate it because I've had conversations with people in banking right now, and it's overwhelming for them. Just they have been flooded with the number of applications. I always say to my clients, we need to have a relationship with a small business banker, period. Not the teller, but an actual banker. And so if this is something that you have not done yet, take this as an opportunity to start building that relationship now, because it is a person who you will need in your hip pocket. It is a person that you will want to have a relationship with. It is somebody that, many of my clients, one of their assignments every month is to make a trip to the bank and to stop at their business banker's desk and to ask them how they're doing and to share some bit of good news. Because when they go to look for funding, when they go to apply for that line of credit, this is now a person with a story, not just the numbers on the paper, right? So if you haven't done that yet, that's something that you can start working on once you kind of get through these next few weeks. So the Payroll Protection Program, the PPP, covers 2.5 times payroll. So if your payroll, as an example, is $10,000 a month, then that means you would be eligible for $25,000 in PPP money. I had a client who owns a construction company. Her husband owns a law firm. They both applied on Monday through their banker. And Tuesday morning, they received word that, yep, your application has been approved and your funds should be available later this week. So I've not yet talked to them today, but we would anticipate that those funds would be here by Friday. And people say to me, well, how did they get it to happen so fast? They got it to happen so fast because they had their numbers together and they knew what the banker was going to need based upon the information that was submitted. So the challenge is, and in talking to bankers right now this week, is that if you don't submit a complete package and it's not perfect, you likely won't hear from them. It will be moved to the side because there is such a volume that's coming in right now. So anything that you can do to put yourself in a better position to have all your financial information to them that they're requiring, and you can see on their website. Now, this program only right now is available to the 1,800 already approved SBA 7A lenders. These are banks who are providing the funds, and the SBA is the one backing them, which is why you don't have to have a personal guarantee. And it is a quote unquote relatively streamlined process. The bank is doing the vetting for this program. You have the opportunity, it looks like a loan, but it has the possibility, these are all my catchphrases here, the possibility of being 100% forgiven if you work within the terms that they give you, meaning that 75% of those funds have to be used for payroll. And then 25% can be used for, up to 25% can be used for other things like operating expenses, meaning most people are looking at it as a month's worth of rent or some portion of rent or utilities. At the end of 6 months, you go back to you have a 6-month deferral, you go back to your bank and you submit the paperwork to them and you say, here's how I've used my money. I'm going to ask for a deferral. That bank then has 30 days to review how you've used those funds, and either they stamp and say, yes, you are approved for the deferral, and 100% of that money is wiped away. Or they can come back to you and say, well, you didn't use the funds in the ratio that we needed, so we've wiped away of your $25,000, $20,000 of it, and you are obligated for $5,000 of it. And you have 2 years from the time that you got the funds to repay that balance, whatever it might be. The current interest rate on that is 0.5%, and it can only go up to 4%. And for all of us small business owners, we know that is nearly impossible to find those kind of terms as far as a small business owner. So it is a really good deal for small business for those people who are going to be eligible for those funds. Not all banks offer this. I am recommending that you go online, look at your bank's front page website, and it will either say, yes, we are accepting PPP applications, or you may even be seeing now within this first week, we've had to pause. And so because their systems are so overloaded, they took a wave of people and then they had to stop because they couldn't keep up with the flood of applications coming in. And so it will be opened again. More people will come through and then close. So if you didn't apply right now, I'm going to say don't panic. There is money that is still available. I do not have a crystal ball, but I imagine there will be more economic support for small business owners that will come down the pike later as well. And so if you can go through the process right now and get yourself prepared for this, this could be something for you to consider too. The second thing for you to look at is the EIDL loan advance. You can do this one straight at the SBA website. It is a very streamlined preliminary application. It allows the SBA to open up $10,000 in funds to you relatively quickly, though I will tell you the system is overloaded. And I had people submit these applications when they were first made available near the end of March, and not a single one has received their funding yet. And they've started to do their follow-up phone calls, and they've been told to resubmit applications. So I don't quite know what the status is ultimately going to be of that, but that is another source that is available. And I do believe that again, the system is so overwhelmed right now. It's going to take people a little bit of time to get those funds. And that's the hard part for small business, because so many small businesses are really like month to month in terms of how they work. And so getting this cash sooner would be more helpful than waiting. The last person that one of my clients talked to at the SBA said it would be maybe 4 to 6 weeks before they would have those funds available. So just some context there, but I do think it is worth your time to submit. Now, this is a 2-part application. It also has the ability to be forgiven. It is a 2-part application. The first part is online. They do ask for your bank account information on there. So if that's not something you're comfortable putting into a portal through the SBA, then it's probably not going to be right for you. But if you're willing to do that, then just know that is legitimate and it is part of the process. They will be in touch with you and let you know the status of your application at some point. But again, I wish I had something more to say. One of the other options you could consider is an SBA bridge loan. So if you've been familiar at all or worked at all with the SBA, this could actually get you financing up to $25,000. This again is offered through banks and who are approved lenders through the SBA. The challenge with this right now is going to be there's just so much moving through the banking system right now with applications being submitted. Again, if you have a relationship with your banker, it would be a good idea to just ask them, hey, I'm going to submit this. Should I do that as well? And get the perspective because they will have one. I ended up on a conversation yesterday with my business banker, not related to this. Somebody hacked my bank account and cheerfully stole some money because why wouldn't they? And so I had called in and I ended up getting transferred back into the branch. And so we had a good conversation just about the volume of things. And he was the second banker I talked to this week. And, you know, it's a lot for them right now too. And they really are doing their best. And those resources are out there for you. And if you don't have a relationship with a bank, I want to say this, don't let that discourage you. If you know other business owners who are applying for the PPP and are working with other banks maybe that aren't yours, don't be afraid to start a conversation with that business banker now. I had another client who was not getting any service. at their bank. Their banker couldn't provide them any information, was ghosting them, which was not a good thing. And there's a fair amount of money that this company holds at this institution. They asked a colleague where they banked, and it was a small community bank. And the small community banker said, not a problem, I've got you, and took care of things very quickly, was super responsive. And again, they're part of that group that will have that money here this week. So there is good news out there, and I want you to know that. So again, look at the PPP for yourself, look at the EIDL loan for up to $10,000. Again, that is also forgivable. They have certain terms, and you can look online and see what those are. The SBA has a bridge loan program as well that you might consider. And then through the city of Hillsboro, you all have opened up funds that have been opened up for you. And then the state of Oregon obviously will be, if they haven't already, will be following suit. And then just like I said, keep your ear to the ground for anything else that you might hear about for small businesses. And so I'm gonna pop back to the PowerPoint, and then we're gonna bring it home. All right. Okay, here we are. So we've talked about borrowing options, gone over those. You know, the thing about the final point that I want to make on this, and this is really the thing for you to consider, 2 points. Be really clear about what you need the money for, and make sure you do not commingle it with your other funds. So if for any funds that you do get where there is forgiveness involved, where it is a loan on the surface but can be turned into a forgivable grant, which is what we're seeing much of, make sure you have a secondary bank account open and you can clearly show where those funds went to, and only use it for those purposes. And remember that if you are, you know, if cash flow was a problem before and you get capital, it may be very difficult for you to meet the requirements of repayment as time goes on. So I think I saw a question pop up. I think I did, but I can't get to it. So we're almost done here. We have just a couple more slides to go, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions. The next thing that I would say to you is, oh, hang on. Let's try. How about this one? There. I think you can see that now. Elizabeth, can you tell me if you can see the slide with the pig?
Yes, I can.
Why, thank you very much. Okay, so the next thing that some of you might be considering too is raising investor capital. That can be something that could be considered as a long-term situation for you. My only point that I want to make on this, and this is a very long conversation that someone can have about this point, is don't let cash flow pressure lead you to really poor decisions for the future of the company. So partner wisely. Know who you're quote unquote getting into business bed with, because the future of your company definitely is in jeopardy if you end up with the not best of intended people who you are doing business with. The next thing I would say to consider is selling non-essential assets. So those of you who have physical inventory, you have products that, machinery that you use for manufacturing, equipment that right now, because you have scaled back, it might make some sense to get, yes, it's only a one-time sale, but is there something that you can sell right now that can put a little bit of cash into the business right now? And then the other thing I want to say, you know, to this point is, how can you pivot? You know, everyone is talking about this. How can you pivot? What would that look like for you? You know, are you my caterer and event space who has gone to only family dinner and delivery? Could you be the hairdresser who is selling hair color kits and 30-minute virtual consultations? Could you be the children's speech therapist who had a physical location and 3 therapists, and in 7 days transitioned that entire business model to online? the day that the governor said only essential businesses can remain open. She lost 25% of her business the day she went to an online model, but she retained 75%. And it was through decisive action and clear planning that she was able to do that. Could you focus on online sales right now? Could you double down on some of your offerings? My commercial beekeeper right now is doing free shipping on all orders over a certain amount. And they're talking up the health properties of honey, and sales are increasing daily. And it has been a side of their business that has been neglected because they had been so focused on the distribution into major retail chains. So what can you do to bring in revenue now? Could you offer a consulting, if you're a service-based business, can you offer something that is consulting in nature that's maybe a mini version of what you would do on a bigger scale for people who are looking for some support? It's a win all the way around. It brings in some money for you. So what could you do right now? The other thing I would say is you need to double down on your marketing, whether it's through increased visibility, meaning you show up bigger, bolder, and louder. Don't let people wonder if you are still in business or not. Or if it is increasing your spending. Now is the time to be in touch with your people, letting them know what they can do. What is it that's your area of expertise that's going to guide them through this time? And then stand out and be seen. You know, don't leave people wondering whether you're still in business. Keep in touch with them. You know, Mr. Rogers is the one who always said, you know, we need to look for helpers. And being a helper right now is going to create a lot of goodwill capital that you can't measure right now. But it will be realized in the future. So those are my top suggestions for navigating some cash flow challenges right now. Again, in one of the most unique times we've ever been in business. And I would love to be a resource for you. I would love to be a resource for you if I can. If there is accountability, Elizabeth knows this, I love accountability. So if you would like some accountability on an action that you're going to take, you can send me an email, debbie@debbiepage.com, and say, this is my thing I'm going to do. And I'll follow up with you and see how that's going, because I'm really good at that. And, you know, just remind y'all that we're all in this together. And if there is truly anything that I can do beyond this, either to validate or to provide guidance or support, don't hesitate, you know, to reach out or follow up with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and, you know, anything I can do to support you, I'm here. So I know we had some questions pop up, or maybe people were leaving. Let's take a look here. Okay, let's take a look. Michelle had to leave, or yep, Michelle had to leave. Goodbye. Henry, you said, what are the interest rates on the EIDL and the SBA bridge loans? So the EIDL is 3.75%, I believe right now, and 2.75% if you are a nonprofit. And then again, there is some forgiveness on that. And yeah, Brad, you're correct. And you have up to 10 years to repay that amount. And again, I believe they're also doing some timing of repayment of the loan depending on the size of the loan is the other thing to consider too. So that's great. Thanks, Brad. I appreciate that. Other questions?
I would just step in and say that, just as a reminder, I believe that you can't do the EIDL and the PPP. You have to choose one or the other. So I think just planning out and thinking about which one's going to be the right one for you, but it is a choice that you have to make.
Right. And for people, and this is where one of those things, you're 100% correct, Dana. And one of the things too is that because of the delay in the EIDL, that first $10,000, if you have applied for it and kind of simultaneously the two and the PPP and the two things are coming together, they can be rolled in. So you can't get both, but they can be combined to add up together. Yep.
Great. I didn't realize that. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Who else has a question? Feel free to just chime in.
We have about 5 minutes left, folks. So now's your opportunity.
I will sit here playing Jeopardy music in my head.
Well, I'll just ask a question. I thought I heard this morning, but it could have been that I was slightly delusional, that the federal government was putting forward another 240 billion for the PPP and adding to that since it has been depleted so quickly. Was I wrong or did I hear that?
I hadn't heard the number, Deanna, but I'm not surprised. You know, as small business people, it's been hard for me as a coach to hear solo practitioners talk about, you know, basically just kind of throwing their arms up and saying, I don't even want to apply because I'm not going to get it anyhow. Like they're just like, I'm not even going to get it. When they need it just as much as a medium-sized business does. And so I believe whether that's the number or greater or smaller, I would not be surprised at that at all. And I actually have a feeling that over the course of this year, we'll see at least one, if not two more of those. Again, we are, as small business owners, the engine that moves the economy of our country. And so it is on, you know, it benefits the government to make sure that we stay in business.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I was just reading while you were talking some headlines, and they are negotiating 250 billion right now, but that there's a major holdup in that they don't want it all to go to small business, that they want part of it to go to hospitals and some going to even local jurisdictions. So that could be a huge, huge, huge hit if it's not to just small business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you know, I grew up in a small town in central Washington, and, you know, they were talking, I subscribed to the newspaper there and get it online, and was reading about how, you know, because of elective surgeries and, you know, other procedures that have had to be postponed, the impact that it's having, you know, on those businesses, you know, as a hospital system. And so, you know, the trickle down of all of this and the impact at all the levels is significant, and it's painful, and it's going to be felt for a long time.
Yeah, but the article also said that they were not trying to hold up the 250 billion. They were trying to double it. So 250 billion would go towards other things. And then, you know, so who knows? It is good that they're negotiating for more. So.
Yeah, because people need it. That's for sure. Everyone from small business owners to, you know, people in the workforce who've been laid off and furloughed, and, you know, those are hard things. And I know some of you have had to do that too, and that's not easy. So.
Well, it's interesting that Washington has stepped up from a state perspective to provide for small businesses. Our hope is that Oregon will take a look at that as well, and our governor will put together a small business funding package as well. So interested in terms of what the dynamics of what Washington did for small business.
Yeah, so the small business loan through the state of Washington, here, I'm going to pull this up and kind of share with you what they put out yesterday. So $10,000 in emergency funding. It's as a grant. You have to submit this application and again, it's very streamlined. I've taken a look at it in terms of how your business has already been impacted by the pandemic and what you foresee the future of your business looking like through the remainder of the year. Then you submit this application to your local office of economic development. In my case, I'm in King County. I live just outside of Seattle. It actually went to an office at the Seattle Chamber, and they're the first pass at reviewing applications for our region. And it's done county by county, and then those are passed on to someone, as they say, at the governor's office, and then is reviewed and awarded. So the Economic Development Office vets the applications and then is passed along to someone at the governor's office, and then they are sent off to for disbursement. Now, the requirements are we have to have been in business for a year. We can only have up to 10 full-time employees. So it's definitely for what I call the micro business owner. And the funding is meant to support existing businesses. And the funds can be used for, I found this interesting, for rent, utilities, marketing, consulting, So they're also looking at ways that small business owners are going to be recognizing that in addition to overhead, that they may need to bring in other resources as well. So it was nice to see that. And, they're telling us that it'll be 4 to 6 weeks before anybody starts hearing back on that. But I hope that the state of Oregon does the same for you too. And it seems that there's some mirroring that's been happening. So hopefully they can see that as a model that they can follow too. And my hope is it actually gets the money into the hands of these, again, micro business owners. And it does not impact any other applications that these businesses have with the PPP, or so you can get the state funding, you can get other regional funding. It's not exclusive. So you can start putting this together.
And what was the total amount of the package?
Yeah, let me see. I can't remember. Was it 500 million?
That was 5.
5 million. 5 million.
5 million. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Well, sorry, we're over our time, but thank you so much, Debbie. Really valuable information. Truly appreciate you joining us. Thank you all for joining us. Next week, we have a full lineup for our Small Business Solutions series, so be sure to look at our email and get registered. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Thank you.